Mindful of that, we've called on a wizened attorney to help us out, former federal prosecutor Bruce Reinhart. Bruce, it's good to have you back. I'm sorry we continue to have to talk about Ferguson. Is it unusual for a grand jury to deliberate as long as this one has?
No, it's not at all. I think what's going on here is good. It's that the grand jury is taking their time. They're listening to all the evidence. I mean, the judge even extended the time to allow them to sit to make sure they have plenty of time to do their job. And that's not unusual. The grand jury has to hear, they only sit once a week. They can only hear from so many witnesses in any given day. They want to have time to digest and understand what they hear. So I don't think this time period is that surprising.
And sir, is there a difference, or can you explain the difference between a grand jury, for example, and a trial jury in terms of probable cause?
Absolutely. Good question. The grand jury's job is simply to find probable cause. Did it probably happen that a crime occurred? The trial jury, or what's called the petit jury, has to decide, can the state prove beyond a reasonable doubt that a crime occurred, which is a much higher standard. And that's one of the things that the district attorney is going to have to balance here, and one of the reasons I think they're using a grand jury. It gives them a test run. They can see their witnesses, they can see how the grand jurors react to the witnesses, and they can actually talk directly to the grand jurors during the process. So that's going to help them decide later on whether, even if they could prove probable cause to this grand jury, can they prove beyond a reasonable doubt to a trial jury.
Okay.
Bruce, this process has been fraught with leaks. We don't know exactly who is leaking what to whom, but we do know that a lot of this is characterizing the direction in which the grand jury appears to be heading. Is this unavoidable given the interest in this case, or have these leaks really served as a catalyst for some of the increased tensions we're seeing?
Well, there shouldn't be leaks, and the law is set up to prevent these kind of leaks. And in fact, in federal court, it's a crime to leak grand jury information if you're either a grand juror or the court stenographer or the prosecutor's office. And the reason they do that is you want the witnesses to be able to feel comfortable that they can freely speak, tell the truth, and you want the grand jurors to be protected. Their identity is secret, and they need to be protected from whatever may happen based on their decision. So that's why leaks are a dangerous thing. It can also be used as a way to influence public opinion, and I think in this situation it's bad. The whole purpose is to get all the information in one place in front of one body at one time. To have leaks of imperfect information causes problems, because what may come out is something very exculpatory or something very inculpatory, but you're not hearing the whole story at once. So yeah, I think it's problematic.
And sir, are they feeling the pressure? I mean, they must be under a tremendous amount of just pressure and stress, for that matter.
I think grand jurors always take their job seriously. I think in this case you're right, Olga. They're going to take it extra seriously, given what they have to know is the community effect of what they're doing. But in my experience, they're going to do their job. They're going to do what the law requires them to do, as hard as it may be.
And we have heard so many people talk about the fact that they won't be satisfied unless there is an indictment. With that kind of pressure from the community, how does our legal system endure the overt political pressure being brought to bear?
Well, I think that's exactly why the district attorney is using a grand jury, because the district attorney, who's an elected political official, is not making this decision. It's a body of the public, and so it's a way to try to legitimize whatever decision is made in the eyes of the public. They will perceive that it was presented fairly to a body that took its time and made a decision. I think what we heard the police officer just say is true. People are going to react to things outside of this indictment, to the history of problems, history of violence, what they perceive as police misconduct, no matter what happens here. So all the grand jury can do is the little part of the process that it has to do.
And I wanted to add something, that our Newsmax website has the story of gun sales rising, and I was talking to JD about this. In fact, here in this report, one shop reports selling 2 to 3 times more weapons than usual in recent weeks. Sir, that averages about 30 to 50 guns every day. Astonishing.
It's sad. It's a sad statement on where we are as a society. This is a legal process. Something happened, and we're just trying to figure out what it was. That's all that's going on here. There are bigger societal issues here that need to be dealt with through the political system, through the media, through other avenues, but not through people taking the justice system into their own hands.
And the decision of Governor Nixon, a while back, he caught some heat where he seemed to be asking for an indictment. Now, weeks later, sending out the Highway Patrol, I guess the National Guard as well, collective security force in anticipation of what may happen. given the definition of what a reasonable person would do, is that a reasonable course of action, or might that drive some into violence?
Well, I think the first part, if any political official or any member of the public or the media is asking for an indictment, that's wrong. They don't know the evidence. The only people who know all the evidence are the grand jurors, so none of us should predict or hope what the result will be. The result will be whatever the facts lead to. To the extent the governor is putting security forces in place and the local police are, I think that's responsible. I mean, they have to do that, because if they didn't, they would be criticized later, and I think everyone wants there to be safety. So I can't criticize them for that.
And Bruce, you've seen a lot of these grand jury verdicts come down. Your words of wisdom for those who are watching and waiting?
This is not the end of the process. Whatever the grand jury does is a starting point, not an ending point.
Correct. Excellent advice there.
And on that note, we will continue to keep an eye on what happens in Ferguson. Did you ever develop a sixth sense as a federal prosecutor when a grand jury would come forward with a decision?
Well, as the prosecutor, you know the evidence a lot better that you're presenting, and you have a pretty good sense. Probable cause is not a high standard. So you could get an indictment. That wasn't always the question. The harder question is, could I get a conviction? And as an ethical prosecutor, even if you could get an indictment, you don't want one if you can't prove your case later.
So it's interesting to watch this process at work in Ferguson, despite the political pressures, despite the threats of violence. The grand jury is doing its job, and for now it appears that the system is working.
Certainly hope so.
Bruce Reinhart, we sure appreciate your insights and analysis. We're sorry we have to continue to talk about Ferguson, but it's in the news, and we do appreciate the fact that you've dealt with this entire process before as a federal prosecutor.
My pleasure to be here.
Thanks so much. Very good. And we are going to continue on America's Forum. There's lots more to get to, but coming up right now, a Newsmax Now update. And we'll step aside for that and then be right back with more.